Hello, this is Mark Smith with Family Tree Counseling Associates, and I'm going to be speaking on this video today about turning the other cheek during marital warfare. Of course, that's a biblical reference, and it can be seen as being passive. But what I mean by turning the other cheek during marital warfare is really not having to knee-jerk react to whatever your significant other is placing in front of you, and to really, truly seek to understand them. Stephen Covey, one of his 7 steps of highly effective people, I think is what it is if you want to be understood, then seek first to understand. And that definitely has application in relationships, probably more than any other place. Your spouse's feelings and thoughts and reactions and projections are complex. As they start into some kind of critique of you, you might think you know what they're going to say, but you don't know what they're going to say. That has been one of the most interesting things about being a therapist is a client will come in and they'll begin talking, and I think they're going this way, and I almost blurt some kind of direction or thought about them going this way. But when I'm doing good work, I shut up and I let them go where they're wanting to go, and they surprise me by going that way, and then I get to know who they are and what they're really feeling, and that's a gift. Stephen Covey also said that when you really hear somebody, you are giving them psychological air to breathe. Conversely, if you're unable to hear your spouse and they are unable to hear you, the air goes out of the room and you're both suffocating for breath. Most people don't realize this, but as marital partners, much, if not all, of what you say to your spouse is a projection. It's you have these little binoculars that you see them through, and that's your reality, and it's tainted by your background, your childhood, your previous relationships. So you're not ever really able to see them. You see your version of them, and couples that learn how to be non-reactive and good listeners and non-defensive and non-shame based realize that many times they're projecting, and communication really happens when you just shush yourself down and listen and listen and listen and listen some more. You don't have to agree. Just because you're listening, you're not somehow agreeing with them. I had a couple in this week. I don't even remember who it was, but one I don't know which one of them was, laying out the sins of the other. They did this, they did that, they did this. And then the other one finally piped up and started to defend themselves. And I said, well, we don't really have to do that. And I think it was the wife said, I want to make sure this stuff come out. And I said, well, we'll get to it. But whenever you interrupt your spouse when they're talking, it's like you're preempting their efforts to make themselves known. And believe me, if you allow them to make themselves known to you, then they will then in turn listen to you. Again, if you want to be understood, then listen to them first until they're done, and guess what? They'll turn around and be open to listening to you. So almost every marital session that I have, and I have many a week, 28 or 30 a week, unless the couple is very savvy and they've been in therapy for a while, they sit down, and when one person is bringing issues to the table, the other one, I can just see them preparing their rebuttal. And people that have worked for me for a while know to sit and listen and not interrupt, and let them finish. But new folks to therapy always want to rush in and set the record straight and defend their honor. And when they do that, they really shut the process down. I've mentioned this before in other videos, but I've been employing what's known as a Mago Dialogue with some of my clients. And that's Mago therapy is a brand of therapy built by Harville Hendricks in the book that he wrote, Getting the Love You Want. And I've known about Mago Dialoguing for 25 years or more, but it always seemed so silly and corny. I couldn't make myself do it or my clients do it, but I wish I would have. So what happens is one person comes in to share, and not only can you not interrupt, you have to parrot back or mirror back to your spouse exactly what they're saying to you, no matter what they're saying. And believe me, that's sometimes hard to do, because if they come in and say, I think you're a big fat jerk, and nobody likes you, then you have to mirror back. What I hear you saying is that I'm a big fat jerk and nobody likes me, and to not choke on those words, and to really try to listen well and empathize to your partner. However, there's nothing magical about any technique. And although I love Mago Dialogue, and it's helped me to probably be 80% less reactive, not just in my relationship, but in my life, I have to say that it takes two people to do the work. And if one person is a marvelous Mago Dialoguer and a listener and non-reactive and turns the other cheeks, I guess what I'm saying is I believe in turning the other cheek several times in a conversation. But I believe Jesus, and I don't know where it is in the Bible, but I think he said, someone said, well, how many times should you turn the other cheek? And I think it was like 70 times 7. And that's a lot of cheek turning. And if one person is doing the smacking and the other person is doing the cheek turning, in terms of marital work, I don't think that's healthy. So I try to encourage couples to come prepared for their sessions, and both of them bring opportunities to be the sender, to be the confronter, to be the bringer of issues. So my experience is hearing non-reactively is a marvelous thing, and it's a great boon to communication. It's giving psychological air to your spouse to breathe. Mago Dialogue can be a very helpful part of that. But here is 5 qualities that both partners are going to need to have a good chunk of these 5 qualities if effective communication and therefore rebuilding the marriage can happen. So the first quality that both people need is motivation. And most people come to our offices motivated to not get divorced and lose half their stuff and lose half the time with their kids and, be the only one in the family system who's got a divorce and be sad and lonely. That's why they come. They don't want all that stuff to happen. Once they get here, I try to teach them that there's a better reason to be here, to do the work, and that is because you really have a clean, crisp vision of how dysfunctional and crazy you really are. And it's disturbing. You're disturbed by your own craziness, and it motivates you to do work on yourself. When I say craziness, I'm not meaning it in a mean way. I think everybody's a little bit crazy, probably especially me. So don't take that in a shaming fashion. The second quality that people need to have is they must be teachable. I have people come in all the time in tremendous crisis, and they're sort of being victim-y, and they're venting and they're triangling, and it looks like they're doing good therapy because they're sharing so much emotion. And I just tell them to stop it. You're not here for that. You can do that at home for free. You're here to learn something. You're here to learn who you are, where you came from, why you married, who you married, and you're here to learn that you've not been victimized ever by your spouse. You recruited them, you chose them, you've chosen to stay with them, and any damage that they've inflicted upon you is your responsibility. So people must be teachable. They must be open to viewing the world in a different way and shifting their paradigm. So the third thing people need is they have to have pain. I don't have any magazines in my waiting room, and it's not because I'm too cheap to buy them. I don't want anybody reading magazines or newspapers in my waiting room. They need to be preparing for their sessions. I've had people come back and I had a guy bring a newspaper in the waiting room once, and he sat there for 10 minutes, and he came back, and I said, "What shall we work on?" He goes, "I don't know, I haven't thought about it." And I'm like, "Well, you know how the Bears are doing because you read your paper." No, you got to prepare. You have to bring your pain in. You're responsible for your own recovery and your own work. And you have to root around in there and grab and pull some out and be ready to take responsibility for your life and do what work that needs to be done. And only you can know that. Now, if you're not feeling a lot of pain, it's either because you're fixed, which early on is not really possible, or you found ways to go back to numbing yourself out. So the problem with pain, though, is if it's infected with a victim paradigm, it's poison. And the other problem with pain is sometimes people have too much. Or what we're looking for in terms of people's pain is like the three bears, just right. Tons of pain, but not too much to where it's overwhelming or debilitating, and not victim-y pain. The fourth quality that people have to have is they have to be able to trust. They have to be able to trust the universe in general and their therapist in particular, and their therapy group if they're in a therapy group. And if homework is assigned to read books, they have to trust the author of the books. They do have to have the capacity to trust. And some people have been so damaged by their parents in their childhood or by abuse from other adults in their childhood that they really don't trust anybody on the planet. And it makes it difficult for them to do therapy. And then the last thing is a willingness to follow through. If you're going to re-engineer your personality from the ground up and then re-engineer your marriage from the ground up, that's a lot of work. And you're going to have to do some homework. And that's going to mean some group therapy. Probably with our clients in the first year, the ones that have these they probably read like 12 books. And they do a lot of group therapy. They do a lot of couple therapy. But, it takes a lot of effort to re-engineer yourself from the ground up, which is what recovery is. So, turning the other cheek is a marvelous thing. It helps you to be non-reactive. It helps you to really hear the other person. And really encourage couples to not react, to not interrupt, to not interject, to not project, and to just hear what their spouse is saying. However, if you're working with somebody as a partner and as a spouse, and they do not have the ability to those five qualities, if they are, there's a verse in the Bible that says, "Do not strongly rebuke a mocker, lest they hate you." Well, to me, a mocker is somebody who's defensive, victim-y, and shame-based and unteachable. So if you happen to be in a relationship with somebody who is that way, who's just arrogant, defensive, victim-y, reactive, interrupting, what we teach people to do, first of all, we won't see them together. And if they're going to come in and even be that individually, we won't see them, because it's a waste of their money, it's a waste of our energy and time. I'm not going to see somebody, and I mean, I'll work with them and try to reach them and try to teach them, but if they're not teachable and they're reactive and they're just going to throw rocks at me during the whole session, then, there's not a lot of, and I especially won't do that in a couple session. So what we do is we teach the other spouse who's in recovery to gird their loins and, in most cases, prepare to separate. Separation is the most powerful and the biggest and most effective tool in the toolbox. And if you have somebody who's unmotivated, you put them on probation. In life, at work, if you have an employee who's not cutting the mustard, and what you do is you call a meeting, you sit them down and say, here's what you need to do. This is your job, A, B, C, and D, and this is what you're doing, and it's not covering these bases. We're going to give you 6 more months, and then we're going to revisit. But you better find a way to get the job done, or you'll find yourself elsewhere employed. But in marriage, people are either too afraid, or they have abandonment issues, or frankly, they have some misguided religious beliefs, because there's nothing in the Bible where it talks about you shouldn't separate, in my opinion. And if somebody is not willing to do the work, and if they're arrogant and they're unteachable, or if they're alcoholic, or if they're raging, or if they're involved with another person, you need to kick their butts to the curb. And when that happens, many times there's a humility and a brokenness that comes from that. The story of the prodigal son, when did he come to himself? When he was out partying and, visiting with prostitutes and drinking? No. He came to himself when he was in the pig field, slopping pigs, and then he like, maybe I ought to go home, So you got to let people experience some pain before they can, hopefully, if you pray for them, and if there's a bit of a miracle, then maybe somebody will come to themselves as they're living at Pickwick, which is a local crappy apartment place that people go that has, the furniture already there, when they separate. So, but if you have somebody you separate and they're still arrogant, mocking, hateful, reactive, unteachable, and they just don't have any of those 5 qualities, well, unfortunately, and it's sad, but you need to move along. It takes 2 people to fix a marriage, and sometimes an employer needs to fire an employee, and maybe that employee will learn from it and someday be a good employee elsewhere. And sometimes spouses do have to fire their spouses if they just aren't workable, they just aren't teachable, they just aren't willing or able to make the changes that have to be made. They're continuing in addictions, they're continuing to be sexually unfaithful. It can't happen. So the analogy I use, and I don't use it lightly, is some of the countries, England early on, Winston Churchill thought he could make peace with Hitler. You don't make peace with Hitler. You go find the man and you kill him. That's the only appropriate response to who Hitler really was. And sometimes it's rare, but at times, sometimes people are so afraid of divorce that they're trying to make peace with Hitler. They're trying to hang out with Osama bin Laden. No, fire them. And if a miracle happens somewhere along the line in the firing, maybe they'll psychologically sort of come to Jesus, if you will. So this process of learning to get healthy, of learning to listen, it's more about the journey than it is about the destination. I wish every couple could save their marriage. Nothing would make me happier. I hate divorce. God hates divorce. Children hate divorce. There's not much good about divorce, but sometimes it's a necessary condition. And you do need two people who are able and ready to do the work. And if somebody needs fired, then they need fired. So please do, folks, learn to turn the other cheek and be non-reactive and become wonderful, deep, empathetic, compassionate, kind, loving listeners. But don't turn the other cheek 70 times and have blood running down your cheek while Hitler's laughing at you. Do what you need to do to protect yourself and provide some accountability when your spouse deserves to be fired, then let them have what they deserve in a non-reactive, somber, thoughtful fashion. So thank you for watching today. Join our channel, the Family Tree Counseling channel. And also want to mention I have 5 ebooks I've written about abandonment issues and marital issues and affair recovery, and also have one coming out on shame in January. So turn the other cheek and learn how to listen. And thank you for watching, and God bless you.